It's a second reading. Will the clerk please call the roll?
Mayor Williams.
Aye.
Councilmember Daniels Cohen.
Yes.
Councilmember Grimes.
Aye.
Councilmember Mail.
Aye.
Councilmember Schultz.
Aye.
Councilmember Siemens.
Aye.
That's 5 ayes and 1 yes. The next item is a second reading ordinance adopting a pay scale for employees covered by the AFSCME contract. Would somebody like to move the ordinance?
I'll
So-
move that one.
Second.
Any comments on this one? Any public comments? The clerk please call the roll.
Mayor Williams.
Aye.
Councilmember Daniels Cohen.
Yes.
Councilmember Grimes.
Aye.
Councilmember Mail.
Yes.
Councilmember Schultz.
Aye.
Councilmember Siemens.
Aye.
4 ayes and 2 yeses.
What'd you call me?
He's paying attention.
4 ayes.
Second reading ordinance adopting pay scale for staff not covered by a collective bargaining agreement. Would somebody like to move it?
So moved.
I heard a move. Do I hear a second?
Second.
Okay. Any comments on this ordinance? Any public comments? Will the clerk please call the roll?
Mayor Williams.
Aye.
Councilmember Daniels Cohen.
Yes.
Councilmember Grimes.
Aye.
Councilmember Mail.
Aye.
Councilmember Schultz.
Aye.
Councilmember Siemens.
Aye.
Back to 5 to 1 and the ayes and the yeses. Final item for the evening is a second reading ordinance providing for the Ward 5 special election and appointing election judges. Would somebody like to move the ordinance?
Move.
Second.
Moved and seconded. Any comments? Any public comments?
Mayor Williams.
Yes.
Can I just note that I had
You had
recommended
made a change
an amendment to the
Yes.
ordinance, and
for
I just
having
wanted
people
to.
for hourly at the beginning and the end, and you're going to continue that in other elections, and it's a good idea. Thank you.
Okay, I just wanted to make sure everyone was
Yes.
aware. Okay.
Will you call the roll, please?
Mayor Williams.
Aye.
Councilmember Daniels Cohen.
Yes.
Councilmember Grimes.
Aye.
Councilmember Mail.
We.
Councilmember Schultz.
Aye.
Councilmember Siemens.
Aye.
4 to 1 to 1. We are adjourned.
Yahoo, Mountain Dew.
I'm not here asking you to stop growth.
A member of my family was killed with a gun. It can happen, and it does, and it was an
For you
accident.
to vote against these fares and cutting services.
Aye, passes 5 to 2.
A lot can happen in a day. We'll make sure you don't miss a thing.
¿Qué tal, amigas y amigos? El segurosocial.gov usted puede solicitar para jubilación o Medicare y obtener una estimación de su beneficio de jubilación. Todo esto en español. Es tan fácil.
Okay, my name is Jeffrey Nussbaum. I'm a member of the city's Board of Elections, and I'm here on behalf of the board to welcome everyone and thank Washington Adventist University for allowing us to use this space not only tonight, but also for the election. So remember, the polling place on Tuesday is come back here, not at the It's from 7 a.m. to 8 p.m. It will be open to Tuesday, July 17th. I'm delighted to be here to provide an overview of instant runoff voting for everybody. This is also known as IRV. This is a method that we use in the city of Tacoma Park for electing our city council members and mayor. The importance for this is that you need to know how to properly rank the candidates on your ballot. And I will be going over that for you, just in case you're not familiar with it. We won't be using the special pens. We'll be using regular paper ballots. We've used special pens in our regular elections for confirming your ballot online. We won't be using that if you remember that from November. So the city in 2006, on the recommendation of the voters, adopted IRV. And here's how it works for you as a voter. The ballot has rows of candidates and columns for ranking them. You'll be asked to select one candidate in each ranking column. You may rank as many or as few candidates as you wish. An easy way of thinking of this is as a backup vote. All that is required for you to do is to indicate your preference when you fill with the first choice. There's a bubble for each choice, each preference. You fill in the first choice bubble for your first choice candidate, and so on. Second choice for second choice, third choice for your third choice candidate. And if you don't want to fill in any additional ones, you're not required to. When you fill this in, you need to be sure and not skip any rankings, because if you do that, then we could miss your vote if we have to use the IRV system. Also, if you enter in your candidate as having been your first and second choice, that will also not get in the way of your vote being counted properly, because that means, according to the city law, if we have that and we've gone down to your second choice and then your third choice, and that candidate's eliminated in the count in the future, then you won't have a second choice on your ballot that we can count. The way IRV works is if a candidate receives a majority of first choice votes, they win. If no candidate has a majority of first choice votes, then we hold an instant runoff. The first step in an instant runoff is the candidate with the fewest votes is eliminated, and then the ballots for the eliminated candidate are checked for second choice votes. Then those second choice votes are then added to the votes for the remaining candidates in the election. So if you voted for candidate B as your second choice and candidate A was your first choice, and candidate B and C continued, candidate A was eliminated, candidate B would then get your vote. We have examples if you want to check afterwards. You can also check with you can also ask me for any of the election judges on election day, or you can ask me afterwards if you have any additional questions. If if no candidate has a majority after this, the step is repeated until we have a winner.
Jeffrey, can I ask you a question?
Sure.
So, as I understand it, for the voter, the idea is that you rank who you prefer from first through third.
Correct.
So that in case your first choice is not does not have a majority, your second choice then has some possibility to get your vote.
Yes.
Okay.
Right. And the point of this is if say everybody, or say 75% of the people want either A or B and not C, then C can't win with 25% of the vote because A and B split the vote. Since originally your first choice is counted, you can't hurt your first choice by choosing additional choices. If you have, as I said, if you have any questions, feel free to talk to me afterwards or ask any of the election judges on election day. At this time, I'm going to hand the mic over to Keith Berner, who has some words about the Ward 5 listserv.
Hi, everyone. First thing I'd like to say is look at this number of people. This is more than sometimes vote in the entire election. So give yourselves a big round of applause. I recently started a listserv to serve all of Ward 5. This listserv is for a place, a resource for announcements about city business, government, politics, cultural events. I want to borrow somebody's hairdryer. I have bricks to give away. You name it. This is a moderated listserv. For those of you who are scared of listservs because of their reputation for descending into flame wars and hostility, this will not happen on this list because there are clear guidelines about it. If you would like to become a member of the listserv, and I expect it will be the way that whichever one of these candidates win, it will be one of the primary ways that they communicate with the community. If you would like to be a member of the listserv, please come up to me afterwards. I will give you a little card with my email address on it. All you have to do is send me an email, and I'll sign you up for it right away. Thanks very much. And I'm now going to pass the microphone to tonight's moderator, Eric Bond of the Tacoma Voice.
Thank you very much. Welcome everyone to the Candidates Forum this evening. Jeffrey filled us in a little bit about the specifics about voting in this special election. As I understand it, outgoing council member Ruben Sniffer could not be here tonight. He's meeting with the pontiff, as I understand it. But in his absence, I'd like to thank him for his service to the city. As we all know, you can't really buy groceries on the council member's salary, so it really is largely a volunteer position, and Councilmember Sniffer certainly put in a lot of time and energy and himself into the position, and so I think as a city we thank him for that. Recently, I've had the opportunity to go on several job interviews, and it's rather nice tonight to be on the other end. And we'll consider this a job interview for 3 candidates for the Ward 5 council seat. So tonight we'll be hearing from Eric Hensel, Jared Smith, and Melinda Ulloa. And we'll begin this evening with a statement from each of the candidates explaining a little bit about why they feel that they would be the appropriate choice for council. Each candidate will have 4 minutes to speak. After that, I have several questions that I would like to put to the candidates, rather more general questions about the role of the council, council members. And then after 4 or 5 questions, we'll open up to the floor, and if you have a question that you would like to put to the candidates, you'll have an opportunity to do that, and we have a microphone that will be circulated. So we're going to just start in alphabetical order. Later on in the evening, we'll move around a little bit. So since Eric is at the beginning of, or middle of the alphabet, but closer to the front, we'll start with you.
Yeah, I usually don't get the alphabet advantage with the last name. All right. Well, first I want to thank everyone who's here this evening. I do appreciate, I think we all here appreciate you taking the time to come down. And I do want to answer the classic question is, why am I running for office? I'm running because I care about progressive values, and I believe the government can give voice to these values through concrete services provided to city residents and by principled stands on national and even global issues. I have spent a career in public service with over 20 years of experience in government, nonprofit policy, advocacy, and working with my own small business. A business that's all of these things I have done to work to make my beliefs a reality in my life. I have advocated for municipal electricity. I've crafted legislation to prevent cities from purchasing sweatshop products and to promote fair housing. I formed neighborhood crime watches, fought against businesses that harm the community, fostered a paratransit program for a transit authority, served under Silver Spring Regional Advisory Board, helped national and national environmental organizations fight for clean water and better transportation. I've worked with labor unions to promote labor rights and retirement security, and I campaigned against the Supreme Court Citizens United decision. My jobs have ranged from positions as city council staff, a mayor's executive assistant, labor union organizer, community organizer, communications professional, and small business owner. And I hold a master's in public administration from the University of Baltimore, as well as a membership in the American Society of Public Administration. Currently, as I said, I have my own company that specializes in strategic communications and policy consulting for progressive, nonprofit, political, and government clients. It's a business I built to ensure my career and my values never conflicted. This is what I have done. These are the kind of skills I would bring to the position of a council member. But I said at the beginning, there are values, a vision that we have as a people. We can all make this world better than we found it. Living and working together in a city as a city is an opportunity to ask ourselves, what does the next generation need and how can we build that for them? That's why I support the creation of public power. Creating our own electric company, free from Pepco, would benefit us all for generations to come. On the day-to-day level, this means building institutions and a culture in our ward that expects more from city government and helps make sure important services are provided. That housing codes are enforced, that tenants have grassroots protections, that streets and sidewalks are in repair, that recreation programs are accessible to our children, that the park on Sligo and Kennebec is improved. A council member clearly has an important role in this, but I also believe that the next council member must help create a new civic association that can truly harness the talent and energies of our residents to represent the interests of tenants and homeowners together and break down the walls in our community. Progressive action also means taking stands on important issues that may never touch the city directly. Tacoma Park is a city that cares and wants to help causes across the country and the world. Some may scoff at this, but I know, as someone who has worked within social movements, that principled statements and local legislation on issues matter to people who fight for change. It says to everyone who struggles for change that we are not alone. It says to the world that one corner of it cares. This is who I am, what I believe, and why I care. Tonight I ask for your support and would be honored to have your vote next Tuesday. Thank you again very much for your time this evening.
Thank you, Mr. Henslow. And Mr. Smith?
All right, thank you. I want to, of course, thank Eric for taking the time to moderate this debate. I don't have prepared remarks, so bear with me. The reason why I'm running today is because I've served on the Commission on Landlord-Tenant Affairs for almost 10 years. This body, it's like a court. It brings landlords and tenants together that may have some type of issue, whether it's trying to get their rent back, whether it's an eviction. This body is probably the most important commission that the city of Tacoma Park has. And in this body, I tried to help either party find some type of resolution. These opinions that are written by a partner at the city's attorney are opinions that the Maryland state courts recognize. So I've tried very hard while I was chairman and while serving on the commission to make sure that these opinions are not overturned by the circuit court. And I'm probably the chairman that has had the least overturning opinions in any other chairman that represented the commission. I also served on the Washington Adventist Land Use Committee. Why did I do this? Because I thought it was important to figure out what is going to happen to health services for our community. Not just for Ward 5, but for all of Tacoma Park and the surrounding area. My family has served this country for over 20 years in the military. They've led men and women all over the world. When Reuben Snipper decided to step down, I thought this was an opportunity that I should step up, that I should lead my community. The things that I believe in are bringing the community together, for renters, for homeowners, so that there isn't this divide, that people that live a block away from one another have the same issues, and that everybody can address these issues. I've done this through a community picnic that I had the Saturday of the blackout. There were about 30 people that attended. I also think it's very important that we protect our natural beauty in Sligo Creek Park. It is under the jurisdiction of Montgomery County, but the city does and should use all its resources to make sure things like stormwater runoff and maintaining the facilities for the children are done on an annual basis. There are a couple things that I would like to clear up that I've learned during the campaign. I am not a developer. I've never developed any property in Tacoma Park. I support gay rights. I support the marriage of gay people. If there are any other questions that may have come up that anyone would like to ask me, please take the time and address them directly to me. Thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Uyo?
Thank you, and you pronounce it very nicely. Thanks everyone for coming. Thank you to my fellow candidates and to Eric Bond for moderating. I'm really happy that today is finally here and I get a chance to talk to everybody. First and foremost, I too have not made any real formal statement, but what I do want to say is that as a neighbor and a longtime resident of Tacoma, my husband and I moved here for the values that the community embodies as an activist and informed as everyone is, and I can vouch for that, having met many of our Ward 5 neighbors. Everyone is very informed about a number of issues and care very, very deeply. I'm a journalist by trade, and I've covered a lot of political campaigns, both local and national, as well as international. And one of the things that I have become very, I think the word is disgusted with, is the way big money has encroached in elections. And one reason I saw this as an opportunity to get involved at the local grassroots level and to make it between you and me, the candidate, or whoever the candidate may be, without getting into fundraisers or asking you for money, because I don't think that's what this particular election at the local level is. So that was important to me to, as a candidate, to get across what is important to me. And what is important to me are the projects that are coming down the pike, in particular for Ward 5. Ruben did a great job. Mark before him did equally great job and is doing a wonderful job as a council member in Montgomery County. So it's nice to know that we have somebody to call, but in particular, our stretch from Carroll to Piney Branch and down to Sligo, we have a lot of things going on. We've got the Green Street project that, quite frankly, is sort of stuck, and I know in particular, I live on the corner of Flower and Maplewood. I am constantly saying, when am I going to get news and who's going to tell me what's going to happen? And that is an important component of what, as a candidate, and if I am elected, what I want to do is inform people about what's going on. So the Green Street project is one that's coming down at us. The city manager, Barbara Matthews, I don't know if anyone here is aware, but she was a wonderful asset to the city. She's going to need to be replaced. The city has to look for another manager. We have to vote. That's one of the first things that this council position is going to have to do is help find a council, a city manager to vote on that. After our last storm, what are we going to do about Pepco? Right. We lived through Isabel, 7 days with no power. The snowstorms 2 years ago, 2 days with no power, now 5 days with no power. That's a county level decision, but I think it's important. Flower Avenue and Piney Branch, I have a problem with the level of activity, specifically Fridays, Saturdays, and Sunday nights. And I look forward to hearing any questions you may have, and thank you so much for your time.
Thank you. So we can pick up on Mr. Jim Roberts here in the front row, who is keeping track of time. I have actually 2 pages of questions, and I'll try to actually keep my questions down so I can turn it to the audience as quickly as possible for the sake of time. And also, we will be trying to keep answers to about a minute from here on out to try to get to as many questions as possible. So I think I'll go back the other direction to Ms. Ulloa. The City Council is a position that requires a minimum of, say, 5 hours a week, something like that. And we've had council members who have, turned up to the meetings, put in the 4 or 5 hours at meetings, and done little more than that. Other council members have spent 20, 30, even more hours a week as council members. So I'm wondering what specific ways you have thought about refashioning your life in order to make the City Council a priority.
Thanks for asking. I am a freelance journalist, and I can pick and choose the days that I want to work, which is fabulous. One reason that this opportunity I could afford to raise my hand and want to participate, my children are older, so I don't have to make breakfast and lunch and dinner all the time. As a council member, I think I've been to council meetings, and they are generally long and tedious, but very important, specifically budgetary and community-wise. I think that getting out in the neighborhood and talking to people and getting on email, but in particular our neighborhood, getting written information to people through their doors is very important. And that is time consuming. So I would say 20 to 30 hours a week. That's what I envision.
Okay,
Thank you.
And Mr. Smith?
Thank you, Eric. I think the position is going to have to be much more than just Mondays at the council meetings. I think that it should be 20, 25, 30 hours, whatever it takes to make the lives of citizens in Ward 5 better. Some of the ideas that I have are having a coffee every Tuesday where citizens can come to Tacoma Bistro and talk about whatever's going on. One of my other ideas is to go around Ward 5 and have meetings to explain what's going on in the city, bring other city officials so that residents can ask questions that may address some of their specific needs. Thank you.
Mr. Hensel?
Well, clearly, campaigning for office gives you a sense of what it'll take to actually serve in terms of the time and the commitment. And it's something that I would definitely not let up on, outside of getting away for some time now and then. It is labor intensive to do the work of a council member. I mean, you do have to be in the neighborhood, you do have to be on the streets, you do have to be looking and seeing what's happening and talking with people on a consistent basis. So, I mean, one of the things I've done with my life, with my business, is to create it so I can have a flexibility to do things like this. And so clearly, I understand the scope of what it takes, and have a history of working in neighborhood activism and grassroots work and labor organizing. So I'm very familiar with how much time it would take to do the job effectively.
Okay, so Jim, maybe we should move to that. That kind of felt like lightning round, didn't it?
Yeah.
So 90 seconds seemed a little bit better.
No, that's good. That's good.
Okay, all right.
Maybe we can go by, if the audience raises their hands, that people get more time, maybe. I don't know.
Okay, it's going to try to give everybody another 30 seconds. But all right, well, Mr. Smith, what does constituent service mean to you, and particularly with Ward 5 residents, as you understand the ward?
Thank you. I recently sat down with Jamie Raskin, and I was talking to him about my run, and he mentioned that when you are running and once you are elected to office, that the big issues are important, but the most important thing is constituent services. And those constituent services are not just going to be what your office can impact. It might be a family trying to change schools for their children. It might be a homeowner trying to save their house. So I think it will run the gambit. But what is important that residents of Ward 5 know that there is someone in the office of City Council that can help them navigate their lives. Thank you.
Great, thank you. Ms. Ulloa?
Thank you. Being a council member really means that you are at the behest and you will serve the public. I think that public services, there's no higher calling than public service, and it's not an easy task because there, as Jared said, there people call and they need your help and you need to step up to the plate. Along with the big projects, I think the most important thing is getting information to people and getting back to them when they need something, they need it, and usually right away. A lot of times the council position, you don't have the power to do anything, but you certainly do have the power to get information and to do what you can and pick up the phone and go talk to the person. Thank you.
Great, thank you. Mr. Hensel?
Well, I have experience with constituent service and the various jobs I've had over the years. I've taken calls all the way from my neighbor's got a goat to my boyfriend keeps violating the restraining order. I've walked through and helped a lot of people over the years to go through a lot of situations, local, state, and federal issues. So I'm very familiar with how to talk with people and identify the issues and try to make the right connections. And also I think it's important too, what I said earlier in my statement about trying to foster a new functioning civic association and try to work and create a network of people who can also help each other in addition to sort of relying on one council member. I think it's important to be able to marshal all of our resources when we can to deal with problems. And that's one way I would look at it. It's not just a council member, but it's what the council member can do and the structure you can leave behind.
Thank you. So, Mr. Hensel, turn to you again. And Tacoma Park has a reputation around the country and around the world, recently noted to some extent in the Washington Post. It has a reputation. What's that? New York Times. Oh, I didn't see that. Okay. As a nuclear-free zone and a sanctuary city. During the Iraq War, the city took a position. It's taken positions on presidents. What are your feelings about the appropriateness of the City Council to be taking positions on national and international issues, and are there any limits to what those issues ought to be?
Well, as somebody in my past, I can't say cities can't do that. When I worked and created legislation that prohibited cities from purchasing sweatshop products and promoted that to about 30-some-odd cities around the country. So clearly I believe that cities can make an impact and can take a stand on important issues. And I think it's particularly effective if we can make it work through what we do locally already, as in not purchasing sweatshop products or not purchasing products that are connected to the nuclear industry. No, I think it's the limitations are really on the tolerance of the voters who elect council members, and otherwise I think it's very helpful and useful, and it's a strong tradition in the United States for municipalities to make statements on all sorts of issues. And I think it's a tradition that we should maintain and protect, for future generations here.
Thank you. Ms. Ulloa?
I moved here because I love the fact that Tacoma took positions, that the city council takes citizens' ideas and wishes and votes on them and says to the country and the world how we feel, and that we're taking a position and we have a stand, a moral position and a stand. I grew up in Latin America, and I lived in Argentina during some of the dirty war years, and I remember, and I, as a journalist, continue to follow the repercussions of that, of having people picked up and arrested and then never seen again. So when Tacoma they said that they were against arresting people and not disclosing their arrest. I was so happy about that. And so, as well as the nuclear-free zone, I think it's great, and I was kind of upset that the council voted to allow the computers, but thank you.
Mr. Smith?
I think it's very important that the council shows this region, the country, and around the world our moral compass. But I think we should go a step further. I think that we should work with other municipalities in the region and come up with something that everybody, whether it's in Hyattsville, whether it's in Bowie, that we all can sign to show the country, how we feel about certain issues. I think it's very important to let people know that Tacoma Park is special, that Tacoma Park has a certain way of taking care of people and has progressive values.
Okay. I'll start with you, Mr. Smith. One way that Tacoma Park differs from houses across the street in Silver Spring is that we are taxed more in Tacoma Park. Do you believe that Tacoma Park taxes are too high, and do you have any ideas about other ways that the city might raise revenue?
Well, I mean, the tax question is always big. Homeowners are always wondering, am I getting the services that I'm paying in taxes? I think for Tacoma Park, it is fair. I think that we could always work more to improve our services. I think we need to work every year to work with the county to make sure that we get our money back from tax duplication. And I think we should look at other revenue sources. There is talk about using the speed cameras as a revenue generator. I don't know right now if that's the right way to help finance the city, but the city does need to look for other ways to generate revenue.
Thank you. Mr. Hensel?
Well, I would say that first and foremost we have to work on the issue of tax duplication and get fair reimbursement from the county. I think that working on that would and being more successful on that front would relieve some of the pressure that people feel on taxation. But I think that sometimes when that issue comes up about taxes, and I've heard this a lot. People over there, in the county, if you look on Flower Avenue, people look across the street when they tell you this. They don't pay the extra city taxes, and their garbage gets collected. And it's a question that we have to answer. That clearly we have more responsive services. Clearly we have the police that is right there, much more than the county. Sometimes I think we have to communicate more with the residents about what we do have and what the advantages there are. But having said that, I think people also expect to make sure there's efficiencies in the spending and some sort of budgeting priorities that make sense. And between all of that, I think you come up to an answer to the taxation question.
Ms. Ulloa?
Well, who hates taxes? Everybody does. You don't. I think that it is Jarrett. I agree with Jarrett. I think it's fair what we pay. I don't like paying it, but the services that we get, I've been relatively pleased with the quality, specifically the garbage men. They're so nice and they do a wonderful job. But I do also agree with Eric that the issue with Montgomery County has to be addressed in a more forceful manner. We really need to make sure that they give us our money. And the police department getting 30% of the revenue, that's a lot of money. I'd like to look at that. But speed cameras, I think it needs to be looked at. I'm not really happy with that, although there's a lot of speeding on Flower Avenue. So it remains to be seen. I'd like to see some other options, though.
Okay, well, let me turn to you with another question. I only have one or two more, and then I think I imagine that there are members of the audience who have questions. You mentioned, Ms. Ulloa, your dissatisfaction with PEPCO. And I don't think that you're alone in the Washington, D.C. region. So the question is, what could you as a council member, what could the city of Tacoma Park actually specifically do with this frustration?
Well, I was doing a little homework and I saw that the Montgomery County a year ago sent a letter in February with regard to having to have the state look at the ramifications of changing the legislature so that Montgomery County could own a public utility. I shy away from that. That's a huge legal issue, and once you look into it, taking up a public facility like that, you have to own what PEPCO already has. I think the Tacoma Park Council, again, should vote to take a position to inform Montgomery County and the state government what our wishes are. I think PEPCO should definitely be held accountable, and I don't think they should get a rate hike. And I also think that they should give back to the infrastructure.
Okay.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Sorry.
Mr. Hensel, do you agree that PEPCO is doing a poor job? And if so, do you have any thoughts on the matter? And that's not a leading question, actually.
Yeah. Well, I'll just say
no, it's not. I mean, maybe they're doing a fine job.
PEPCO is the slumlord of electricity. Okay. They own a system just for electrical distribution that they're trying to squeeze every nickel out of it without doing and near the maintenance that they should do ethically. And it's clearly they're not interested in providing a reliable electric grid in a deregulated system. That's it. I believe in public power, and it's a commitment. It would be a difficult thing to undertake. It's not easy, but it's possible that the city can get control of the lines and run its own municipal utility. At the very least, if you start talking that way, maybe PEPCO will start behaving themselves a little bit better with us. But until then, I mean, basically, power is never given to anyone. You have to take it. And if the people don't own the utilities will own the people. And we can't rely on this system that clearly has failed us time and time again. I think it's an opportunity, and there are cities our size or smaller that have their own municipal electric companies, so it's not impossible, and it's something we really should look into.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Smith?
I disagree that Tacoma Park should get into the business of electricity. I mean, what's the cost? Who's going to maintain it? Where are we going to find the people to run it? I mean, if we really want to take care of the issue right now with PEPCO, we should work with Montgomery County, Baltimore City, and sue PEPCO. We should not go down the road of trying to get into our own type of utilities, providing utilities for the city. If we want an option, bury the lines, bury our power lines. But, I mean, that is costly, and so is it would be costly to create our own utility company. Thank you.
Thank you. I think at this time we should open up the questions to the floor, and maybe we could have a line form right up here in the front. And okay, all right, and Jeffrey will.
I thought you were going to say candidates.
Has a microphone. The role of Phil Donahue will be. If anybody remembers who that is.
That's a dating reference.
Now, before we get into questions, I want to make an observation, which is that there's a large degree of agreement that I've seen among the three of you, and voters are needing to figure out what are the distinguishing characteristics. So of course agree with each other. We're an agreeable city, but also point out ways in which you maybe distinguish yourself as you're answering questions. So if anybody has a question, please come forward. A line could form.
Keith Berner, Flower Avenue. One or two of you said that in order to generate more revenues for the city, that we need to get tougher with the county and demand what is ours more or less. Some of us served on the Tax and Service Duplication Issues Committee in the mid-aughts. Some people, like Seth Grimes, who's sitting right behind me, have worked on this issue for years. And there's been a small amount of success. And I want to know specifically from each of you, what would you do that is different than what has already been done? How could you lend your voice, or what measures would you propose that would actually produce the revenue that we're talking about?
We'll start with Mr. Hensel.
Well, again, I think for us, dealing with the county, we don't have a direct sort of, legislative, thou shalt do this relationship with the county. County is as county does, but we should work harder and diligently and to lobby as far as what we can do and to try to make the case in the court of public opinion and in a sizable chunk of voters in Montgomery County, that we deserve our fair share of what we provide the community. That's really the county's responsibility. It's not, there's no magic wand to be able to say I can do this and we'll do this tomorrow. But clearly it's an issue I think we have to pursue and continue to pursue because it's money that's out there on the table that we deserve.
Thanks. Ms. Uyo?
I think really be vociferous. The TAC, I think, would maybe be a little more aggressive. I don't know how aggressive Mr. Grimes was, or you were, Keith. I know you're very aggressive. But to make a point of not letting the ball drop. I am sure that Montgomery County turns a deaf ear when Tacoma says we really want our money. It's like when my kids ask me for their allowance and I'm like, oh, I don't have it. But really insistence and perseverance, I think, is really the only option that the council has, but and be really diligent about it.
Thank you. Mr. Smith?
The council has to lobby the Montgomery County members. But we received the rebate because it came through Nancy Navarro's committee, the GO committee. So in the future, there will probably be a new county council member that will chair that committee. So we have to make sure that as county council members that we are diligent in lobbying the chairman of that committee, and we have to make sure that whomever is our city manager, that they maintain a strong relationship lobbying the city to make sure that we get a fair rebate every year. Thank you.
Great, thank you.
Mike Davis.
Okay.
It's impressive that we have 3 candidates. There's no question about it. So I have a question for 2 of the candidates. I guess I should ask them separately or at the same time?
You're asking individual questions of two
Yeah.
candidates, okay. But we will allow everybody to, give some kind of a response, but, anyway, go, just tell us what the question is.
Well, my question to Melinda Uola is that so far, we get about 2 or 3 phone calls a day for someone from Jared Smith's advocacy group, and I've gotten a few phone calls from Eric Hensel's. And I've also seen long signs from both candidates. But up until I heard you tonight, and I've gotten mailings from both of them, but up until I heard you tonight, I've heard nothing, with one small exception, from you, even though your views are enlightening and appealing. But I'm questioning how seriously we should take your campaign if so far this is our first real exposure to you, looking at the energy the other 2 candidates have put into their campaigns. And if that's a reflection of energy in the future if we were elected.
Not at all. Actually, I did at the beginning of my campaign. I looked into signs and I looked into calls, and the cost was so expensive. I think there have been a couple of articles in the Post about the Gray campaign and how exorbitant the costs for the signs were. Now, obviously, that's the District of Columbia, but as I say, I personally as a candidate don't feel comfortable asking my neighbors for money to put my name in their front yards. And I have been knocking on doors. I left information, and I'm going to have a social event on Saturday, but I know I spoke to a group at the Erie Maple picnic at the beginning of the summer. So I know I have been out there, I've been campaigning, but I didn't feel comfortable with the monetary issue.
Mr. Tabor, you
Okay,
have...
second question is to Mr. Smith. My discomfort is the question of progressive values. I didn't read the New York Times article, but the Post article pointed out that we're graying in terms of the old progressive values and maybe aren't as concerned about larger issues. So my concern is that there have been 2 candidates that have worked really hard for you, Seth Grimes and Tim Allen, both of whom have been the 2 candidates, the 2 elected people who are the dissenters on the council when it comes to taking progressive points of view. So I have to ask myself, is that influential in terms of if you were elected?
I have not worked for any candidate in this campaign.
Okay.
If you were elected, if that would bear some influence.
Okay, before you answer, can I just so what I'm hearing is Mr. Tabor is asking about your progressive values, I suppose. Is that kind of the gist of it? Whether you are progressive?
Well, he said he's progressive.
Okay,
I mistakenly thought that Seth had played a role in the campaign.
Okay. I'm not sure what the question is at this point.
I will be independent. I mean, anybody that I've spoken to, whether they are a county council member, a city council member, the mayor, we've had discussions, but I will be my own man to represent the people of Ward 5. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. And I'm going to try to do my best here to keep everything egalitarian in terms of questions and so forth. And I'm not quite sure where to go with those questions in terms of making sure everybody answers. But I will say that before we end tonight, Ms. Viola had mentioned an event that she's going to be having, so we'll have a chance for each of you to talk to the voters about ways that they can find out more about your campaigns and events you may be having over the next few days. Thank you. Another gentleman? And if it's at all possible to ask a question that all 3 candidates can answer, that would be my preference.
No problem, Mayor. Giuseppe Cimino, Hilltop Road. 2-part question. Could you please tell me how many times you attended city council meetings today? And also, could you tell me what topic brought you to the most recent city council meeting?
Thank you. Let's see, Mr. Smith?
I don't have an exact number. I would say probably 7, maybe 10 council meetings. Before the race, the reason I go to a council meeting was because of my affiliation with the Commission on Landlord-Tenant Affairs. And when I was chairman, I would have to present legislation before the council and move that legislation and turn it into an ordinance.
Thank you. Mr. Hensel, we haven't heard from you in a little while.
No, how many council meetings? It's been a number. I went through the whole budget process, because I thought that, I wanted to make sure I saw that from beginning to end, because it's really how you tell what the values of a city are. You can say all sorts of things, but it's really how you spend your money. That tells you what you believe in. So I wanted to make sure, I took all that in, and obviously I've been going to meetings, for this season, to be able to understand not just the current issues, but to understand the structure of the council and how people work with each other, and some of the issues that I can see with how council operates. So there's been a number of meetings I've gone to for that.
Okay, Mr. Joe?
In total, I'd say maybe 10, 15 in that area. Way back when Washington Adventist was going to build a giant medical building, attended a few council meetings en masse with a lot of my neighbors to voice our opinions against the building, and I'm glad that we succeeded. And then again, when I was thinking of running and then actually made the decision to run, I too wanted to see what the dynamics of the council were, as well as the budget. It was right about the time that the budget was being decided, and I got to see a lot of what was going on in the council.
Thank you. Next, we have a man with a magnetic personality.
My name is Hank Prensky. I live on Sligo Creek Parkway. I was elected to the City Council twice in 1989 and 1991. And I'm a little disappointed in the process, and I'm thrilled that there's 3 candidates. 2 of them introduced themselves to me during the course of the campaign and had no idea that I had served on the City Council. Eric came to me, and not Eric, but Jared came to me and asked for my support as a former City Council member. At least he knows something of the past. It's also disappointing to hear the level of naivete of all 3 candidates when they talk about speed cameras, when they talk about the tax duplication process that the city has been fighting for, demanding, lobbying, scrounging for at least 20 years that I'm familiar with. And you all seem to think it's a brand new issue that you're going to bring the answer to. Again, doing more homework, having more sense of the history in the past is a much better idea. I do want to say that Mr. Smith has served on 2 major and significant city positions in the Commission on Landlord-Tenant Affairs and the Land Use Committee for the Adventist Hospital. I don't know of anything that Eric or Melinda have done in the city, for the city, and I'd like to hear what committees or what city functions you've taken part in, and if not, why not?
Okay, thank you very much, and thank you for coming to a question.
Thank you for your service.
We'll try to keep speeches up here as much as possible. Okay, so what committees and other city involvement have you been involved with, Ms. Ulloa?
As I said, I was a participant in the neighborhood. It wasn't citywide. It was the neighborhood a coalition against the building at Washington Adventist, the medical building. But I just wanted to get back to you. I never said that I was going to reinvent politics here. I never thought that speed cameras were something new, that the idea was new. I don't happen to personally think it's a great idea, and I do want, if I was elected, to revisit it. So, and I'm really sorry I didn't know you were a council member before. Thank you for serving. I have been raising my family and working, and so as a working mother, that's such an oxymoronic word. I have not really had an ample opportunity to lend myself to committees and such. I have paid attention to them, and I read and I ask questions, but this is really the foray, the push that I'm making to really be active.
Thank you. Mr. Hens?
Well, one thing I would say is that just because a problem is old doesn't mean it can't be solved at some point in the future. I mean, it's obviously been a problem with tax duplication, and I don't pretend to have an answer, but I mean, clearly it's been a thorn on everyone's side, and it doesn't mean it's not a problem today, just because it wasn't solved yesterday. But as far as my involvement, I mean, the closest neighborhood involvement that I have in terms of committees and the kind of traditional is I serve on the Silver Spring Regional Advisory Board, which, you say Silver Spring, why do you think that? But I was appointed as a member from Tacoma Park and did that work for a number of years. And it was very interesting work, and I learned a lot about how county politics work, if nothing else. But for the most part, my career has been, working on the issues that folks care about. But I can't sort of manufacture, a whole list of committees in the city, no. But I've chosen to work on progressive values in a different way, and that an opportunity. This is a chance to be able to step up and apply my skills and knowledge to the community.
Okay, thank you. And Mr. Smith, I guess we've heard much about your work in committees, but is there anything you want to add?
When I moved to Tacoma Park, I thought it would be a great thing to get involved in my community. I mean, that's what you do. I mean, how do you make your community better? If you see something that is wrong, you don't just read about it, you don't just think about it, you go out and try to fix it. And that's what I'm doing on the committees that I've served on. Thank you.
Thank you.
Hi. I'm Dr. Troy Jacobs. I'm on the Washington Adventist Hospital Land Use Committee. I know a couple of you mentioned the hospital, but we actually didn't really have any questions on that, so I wanted to direct a question to you. I mean, very soon, hopefully, assuming no further untimely events and things like that, the certificate of need process will go forward, and there will be some decision, and something will happen with the hospital that will impact Ward 5, but also all of Tacoma Park. There are a number of different scenarios that we have discussed before City Council and in the Land Use Committee. With Jarrett, you said you were on that committee. Some of the other members are in the audience. What would you imagine would be the worst case scenario? Okay. And then how on City Council would you deal with that scenario? Not just for Ward 5, but for the whole city.
Mr. Smith, we'll start with you.
Thank you. Serving on the Washington Adventist Land Use Committee when it was first created by the City Council, I learned that the city doesn't really have a lot of control over that site. The site is owned by the hospital. It is zoned as residential housing. It has a special exception to have a hospital. The worst case scenario that I can see is that the hospital leaves and there isn't any type of healthcare facilities left on the site. What would I do to try to manage that situation? I think that the city needs to work with Washington Adventist or maybe another healthcare provider to provide at least emergency care type of facility on the site. There's nothing guaranteed for that site. The community has to work with the city, and the city has to work with the hospital to try to bring some type of facility that everybody can use.
Thank you. Ms. Uyola?
Having firsthand knowledge and having dealt with the hospital and the board, I believe that I'm hoping that they do actually move to White Oak, but there's no assurance as to how the county's going to vote. worst case scenario is they move lock, stock, and barrel, and they don't have an emergency room for the residents that are really needy. Which is why I really believe that starting back before this meeting, that there should be real meetings with the hospital board to discuss the what ifs. And there's been this giant silence. And I think it is really important. So I'd start talking now and get a plan in place now and get some other kind of healthcare provider in line now. Thank you.
Mr. Hensel?
Well, I guess we got all the worst case scenarios. If there's no medical service there, I mean, I guess any worse, you'd have like bingos and swap meets and empty buildings on the hospital site. But clearly, what the community is interested in is the urgent care, if nothing else, and having something there. And I believe, as Jared pointed out, we have very little leverage in this matter, except the court of public opinion. I mean, clearly, that hospital leaving medical service behind is a tremendous hole that you have to be able to use that loss and leverage, something to remain there. If we're passive and just sort of let things go and are not sort of our traditional Tacoma Park activists, we will wind up with a worst case scenario. And that's something that, as a council member for Ward 5, you clearly have to be in a role to understand that it's the court of public opinion where you really have to be to make this work for us.
Hi, I'm Marty Ittner, Flower Avenue, and I have a great follow-up question to this because I also want to talk about the hospital. I know we have absolutely zero power over what they do, and my specific concern is Sligo Creek, which, as Jared pointed out, is controlled by the county and not the city. We have a really large problem with stormwater runoff, specifically from the hospital. It's a disaster zone on that hillside. Nobody sees it because it's full of invasive species. They have some great plans that, in my mind, the worst case scenario is those plans are never realized. I saw the plans; they're fabulous, including taking out the service road in the back. And I just want to know what we can do as a city to help our little creek that runs through Tacoma Park. And frankly, I'd much rather see us concentrate on Sligo Creek in terms of coalitions between DC, the upstream, what happens upstream affects our creek here rather than global issues. That's just my opinion. But it gets forgotten because it doesn't belong to anybody, and I think it belongs to Tacoma Park. And what can we do?
Could I ask a follow-up question of you?
Yeah.
Okay. So, are you really kind of getting at how does Tacoma Park work with, say, for example, Wheaton and the county? The Sligo Creek comes out of Wheaton into our area.
We don't work together.
Right. Okay. So your question is kind of how to build a regional coalition.
How can we put a focus on our creek, specifically stormwater runoff? We pick up the trash, we do all that. We have that in our power. But stormwater runoff comes from all different types of places.
Mr. Hensel, what can we do to do more of to protect our creek?
Okay. Well, clearly we have some instances where we have the stormwater management fund to be able to work on projects that start the process of being able to control the, as things are built, like Flower Avenue is supposed to be designed to be able to deal with that. I mean, it's, as we move along, we work on our projects in a way that are sensitive to the creek. I mean, it is clearly something that we all appreciate but have very little direct control over, but we can control what goes in and around it. I mean, even as simple as, code enforcement, to make sure properties are clean so trash doesn't go down the hill. I mean, there's all sorts of things that we can work on to be able to, focus energies on keeping the creek clean.
Okay, Mr. Smith?
Thank you, Marty. I think we might need to take a unique perspective. Maybe the city should take Friends of Sligo Creek and make it a statutory committee. give it the power that it could go to other municipalities, whether it's DC, whether it's College Park, and work with them to preserve the creek. Make sure that there aren't any illegal runoffs, that they are doing the best they can with stormwater, and maybe we should use our stormwater practices as best practices for these other municipalities.
I think that maybe a call to WSSC vis-a-vis what's been done in the past and see what other runoff places in the district, the Anacostia watershed, have experienced similar situations, to do a little research and find out what best practices there are, but certainly to, at the city council level, to put something forth to create a body that would then work as a coalition to bring about some form of hopefully gradual change, because I agree it's really gross. But with the hospital runoff, I don't know.
Thank you.
Hi, I'm Maxine Hillary on Sligo Creek Parkway. I'm going to figure out a way to frame this. You know, there is this discussion of values of the city, and by and large, I think most people in Tacoma Park are fairly progressive, but there are voices that may not be as quote-unquote progressive as others. And many of those voices do not feel represented here. And I think at the same time, we talk a lot about affordable housing, when for many of the people that we claim to support, i.e. the renters, they couldn't buy here if they tried. Why? Because the taxes are monstrously high. And we talk a lot about economic development, but I've not seen an economic development plan. So we talk a lot about not wanting to support corporate America, but everything that we buy, or all our entertainment, or everything that we do, we go out of town for, because it doesn't exist in our own town. And what does exist is practically out of reach of the people we claim to care so much about. So two questions I have. Number one, how can we build a reasonable tax base, at the same time have some reasonable business? We've got 5 vintage stores in a quarter-mile area, and no place to buy new shoes except a Mono, which is out of reach for most people. So how do we build reasonable shopping, entertainment, and dining within Tacoma Park that is affordable for the broad array of people who live here, which would do much for our tax base? And how do we take all of the burden off the homeowner, particularly the middle-income homeowner, and at the same time build a sense of responsibility among our renters to take care of our properties? I'm a homeowner who borders all the apartments on East Florida, and it's really difficult to be picking up trash all the time and putting back shopping carts, and feeling that you're just not respected, by the very people who your tax dollar helps to pay for. So there are people that are not feeling represented here, and there seems to be a real lack of balance. So how do we get a tax base that's reasonable and include the opinions and thoughts of all Tacoma Park people, regardless of where they are politically?
Okay. I'm going to break that into 2 questions, I think. So one question I hear is, how can the city council attract a business space that supports that is supportive of the lower income members of our community? Seems like that's one of the questions. So why don't we?
Okay. Taking into account that we've got the Flower Avenue Green Street project coming, in particular, there's a corner Erie and Flower and Piney Branch and Flower. They are run down, and the traffic flow is very, very disjointed, and it needs urban planning. Steps need to be made, in particular, to draw businesses that the community will like and use. I think the tax base question is a county level situation, but as far as helping our neighbors, I think it's a matter of urban planning and reaching out to them. So, and letting them know what's available and knocking on doors. That hasn't been done. I know what you mean.
Okay. Mr. Smith, what can the City Council do to attract reasonably priced products?
The City Council can promote the city to businesses, not just in this region, but around the country. One option that the city can use is an association called the International Council of Shopping Centers, where tenants from around the world go to look for different locations in cities, counties, anywhere in the country. That would give the city an option to tell business owners that Tacoma Park is a great place, that we may want a particular type of restaurant or retailer that would fit our community, like has been done with Ace Hardware and Bread and Chocolate. But it's important for us to look beyond just this region if we're going to bring in retailers that these citizens, not just the low-income citizens, but all the citizens of Tacoma Park can enjoy.
Okay. Mr. Hensel?
Well, I'm interested in economic development in terms of, jobs in the city. I mean, if you look at the hospital for a second, if the hospital actually leaves, that's going to be a tremendous number of jobs that leave. Not everyone lives in the city who works there, but that's still going to be a tremendous hole. I think for me, I'm more interested in trying to attract business that's not necessarily the retail, although it's needed, but to try to find ways to fill the jobs that bring more jobs into the city. And I do think that for us, I would like to try to take a different approach and target the nonprofit community. It's a huge part of the economy in the Washington, D.C. area. Clearly, our values fit most progressives. I mean, we're not going to get the Heritage Foundation moving here. And we could use our energies and efforts to try to develop and place nonprofits that, for a wide range of work, and then bring the jobs closer into town, into downtown, in our area, that can then start supporting retail and other things that people want to have, because you've got sort of a more developed job base, where you want to put the retail.
Okay, thank you. And I'm going to try to frame the second part of the question, which actually was one that was on my list as well in some ways. Ms. Hillary was asking about renters and their relationship to the city. About roughly half of the city is composed of renters, and there's a perception that homeowners are more active in city politics and that sort of thing, active in kind of the social fabric of many parts of the city. So, Mr. Smith, I'll start with you. What would you do as a council member, many renters in this ward, to engage renters and homeowners in the fabric of our city?
The best way that I have found to get people involved is you actually have to press the flesh. You have to talk to people. The city sends out mailers all the time, talking about this committee's open, this committee's open, we have a vacancy. But people are obviously not getting involved. Why? Because they want to actually touch a city councilman. During my campaign, I have talked to so many people that didn't even know they were represented by a city councilman, let alone who it was. So if you want to get people involved in the city, your councilman is going to have to not knock on doors during a campaign, but knock on doors after he or she is elected. That's how you get people involved.
Thank you. Mr. Yosa? Oh, sorry.
It's okay. Uyela.
Yeah, it's getting late.
Going up and meeting people, and not meeting people if you're elected, but going up and saying, this is available, how can I help you, getting people's phone numbers, following up, going to parts of the neighborhood. In particular, Ward 5, I think, is very interesting in that we have low-income residents that are disenfranchised from other parts of the neighborhood, in that they don't know they have a council member. They don't have access to a home computer. They don't have a car. And so it's important to actually go and talk to them and tell them what's available to them and why it's important for them to get involved.
Mr. Hensel?
Well, I do know one thing. When I hear a lot talking to folks that the renter versus owner distinction about how owners pay property tax and renters don't, and I always tell people, it's like, well, renters pay property tax. It's just rent. They just don't get the fun of seeing the bill. But clearly, that's what when people are contributing, and we should get past this distinction between renters and homeowners because it's really an artificial distinction when you get down to it. And that's why when I said earlier in my opening remarks is that. In addition to reaching out to folks and touching them directly, I think we need to create a civic association that functions, that involves folks in the community, that is flexible, that works with the schedules that they have in the community. There's a lot of folks who are working different shifts or working multiple jobs in the rental community. So to be able, it's not just sort of say, this is our sort of, I'm going to visit you here, or this is our meetings here. Try to create a structures that is generated by the residents, that fits their schedule, that fits their needs, and allows them to address issues in their community and develop the skills and the resources to be able to address issues in their neighborhoods.
Okay, great, thank you. And time is getting short, and we have many people in line who would like to ask questions. What's that? So I'm not sure how are you all doing? Are you hanging in there? All right. And actually, I have one more question I want to put to you eventually. So maybe we can finish with these questions. And yes, ma'am.
I'm Ann Hollander. I live on Flower Avenue. I have a question. Okay. I have a question. It's a small question that leads into a larger question. The smaller question is that within our ward, there was some difference of opinion on these blocking off of commuter cut-through roads. And different parts of the ward took different positions. And the part of the ward that I live in, on Flower Avenue between Marion and Maple, was very much opposed to sectioning off those roads and creating an impediment for commuters. I spoke specifically with Eric about this issue. My impression is that your opinion or your position on that has changed over time. How do you guys feel about that? How would you reconcile differences within the ward if they exist? And the larger question is, I have a sense there's some form of balkanization within Tacoma Park proper, and that our ward fairly often gets the short end of the stick. Do you feel that that's true? And how would you reconcile, how would you integrate our ward more fully into the life of the Tacoma Park at large and give us a greater voice on the council?
Okay. Cut through traffic and balkanization. Mr. Smith.
Okay. Cut through traffic, I do not support any type of alienating the rest of the ward from the Hilltop section. I think there should be one Ward 5. How do we make Ward 5 more important to the rest of the city? We need to vote. We need to come out to the ward meetings at the city council. I was at a meeting for Ward 4. There were like 25 people. I was at a meeting for Ward 5. There may have been 3 people. We need to show the city that we are engaged. Doesn't matter if you're a homeowner. Doesn't matter if you're a tenant. Everybody needs to be involved.
Mr. Hensel?
Well, on the balkanization, I can agree. I mean, exactly, the voter registration rates are very low. I think it needs to be improved, and I think we have to have a mechanism to improve it. And one of the things when I talked about we need to have a functioning civic association, because I know, for instance, Seth would be able to speak to his civic associations that are active, that do work, and to be able to have our voice heard more, I think we have to be able to come up with mechanisms for more of us to be heard more efficiently. That includes voting, but that includes having an active listserv. that includes having, 10 people that email, city directors about some problem on a street as opposed to one person. That way we can, what we lack is some of the institutions that other wards have that plug them into the system and make their voices amplify. And as opposed to the cut-throughs, which I have like 10 seconds, what I would like to do is to try to, instead of coming up with a sort of the either or, like either it's this or it's that, I think sometimes we have not looked at how to work out a solution that provides all of us with what we need. I think we get stuck in these situations where, this is a cut-through or not. And no one wants to have the blockage, but we need to work with folks to be able to get them what they feel is safe.
Thank you.
On the cut-through issue, that is such a difficult issue because as a commuter, I want to go right up that street, and I know that I'm jockeying around cars and up speed bumps, and I really don't want to hit the little kid that's kicking the ball. I think that Tacoma Park Council and the Sligo Hills Association should really try to come to some agreement that bars that as the end result. I don't want to cut off part of the neighborhood. It's like cutting off part of my arm. However, the safety issues involved, I do sympathize with the neighbors on the other side, and it really pits one part of the neighborhood against the other. Insofar as the balkanization, information, and getting people, having a reason to go to the council meeting. Ward 5 is kind of, it's very interesting when I meet people who live in other wards. They're, oh, you're over there. I live in Tacoma Park. I pay Tacoma Park taxes. I'm not over there. I'm right here. And I think that's how everybody should feel.
Great. Thank you.
I'm Lisa Classo. I live on Mississippi Avenue. And I'm interested in hearing your ideas on how you would work with the police and other community groups on improving public safety. That's something I have not heard mentioned at all. I've heard things on international issues, but this is something I think everyone should be concerned with.
This is you.
Thanks for asking that. Considering that the city police take up 30% of the budget, $6 million plus dollars, and they do a great job, but I never see them walk a beat. I have never seen our cops walk a beat. I really want to see them, in particular in Ward 5, down towards, just walk down Flower Avenue. I'd like them to cross. I know that from working on the Hill that the Park Police and the Secret Service and the DC Police, they do work in concert. There's a substation of Montgomery County on the other side of Flower, in that little shopping mall where Veronica's Bakery is. I rarely see any action where people are walking and talking to people. So security-wise, I think that would help as opposed to driving around really fast.
Thank you. Mr. Smith?
I would like to see Tacoma Parks Police on mountain bikes, riding around the neighborhoods. I would also like to see there is a vacant space on Flower Avenue. I would love to see that as a substation, police substation. Maybe we could do something in conjunction with Montgomery County since they closed their substation on Piney Branch. I think what is very important is to get police officers out of the cars. I mean, we see them, they do have a presence, but we need them to actually be on a beat, actually be in the community. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Hensel?
Well, I have a background. I've worked in crime watch programs over the years and worked with community policing. I mean, it's important to get folks out of the cars and into the community, but it's also really important. It's not just getting people out of the cars, but it's getting the police to really get to know people in the community and develop relationships with people. I mean, if you're talking about the classic beat cop, is the one that knows everybody in the neighborhood and knows which kid should be where and who's should be home and who's not. And it's important because that kind of level of awareness of a neighborhood is very important to sort of pick up and sense problems before they become large or notice things that should not be there. So it clearly is an important thing, not just to get folks out of the car and on bikes, but to try to have programs that really get people connected with the neighborhood in a familiar way.
Where's that speed
Speeder.
Now, if we had a speed camera here, we'd pay for this tonight.
My name is Evelyn Adler, and my husband Carlos Fernandez. We live here on Garland Avenue. And first, I'd like to thank the three of you for stepping up to the plate and being present and trying to represent support. Mr. Bond, if you could help me assist with forming my question. I have three concerns. One, the CFO of this university, Patrick Parlay, has said to me that they have a hope or intention of, we own most of the homes here on Greenwood except for one. They'd like to buy that last one and do a dorm housing for their students. They would like to close Greenwood. And my concern was for the flow of traffic, if Greenwood gets closed, are they able to do that? Does that mean that means more cars going up and down Garland Road? We have a lot of people to speed up and down. We do have 2 speed bumps, and there's already a lot of cars here. So I have a concern about that. I have a concern that they built a new, beautiful music building here, and I was part of, attending when before, and if you had any questions, because I am directly behind the music building. And I thought I'd cover all the bases with motion sensor lights and all these different things, and I missed the venting system above is an air system that constantly sounds like a vacuum cleaner, and it's a ton of sound. So all myself and my neighbors, we hear all day. And for the last 8 months, I've been trying to very nicely, diplomatically email back and forth with Mr. Parlay and Bruce Pike for this VP of the university and the city, and they keep saying, yes, we'll take care of it. Yes, we're going to put some sort of sound buffer. And nothing happens. And all my neighbors we know about, so we talk about it. I represent my little 4 houses there. And that's been a very tedious process. And I have a concern is that also between Greenwood and Garland, there's kind of like a green grass area between the homes that I felt belonged to the city, and I found out through Ali, who's been very supportive in different things in our area when the music building was built. Explained to me that actually belongs to the university. The piece belongs to them. It's right behind our home. Our beautiful bamboo is there. I love the bamboo. Well, in that space there, behind those homes, there's like marsh. It's very marshy. For the last 8 years I've lived here, it's like a breeding ground for mosquitoes. And we get mauled. Like by spring all the way until November, the mosquitoes are out. And again, I've been trying to work and email Bruce and email Patrick, and like, yes, we'll take care of it. And Ali has the solution, seems to be grading, but as of yet, nothing's been done. So I have those concerns.
Okay, so just a preview of coming. This is the job, right?
Yeah.
Okay, so what I hear here is Town and Gown. Ward 5 is very lucky. It's the part of Tacoma Park that realizes that there is a gown in town.
Yeah.
So, Mr. Hensel, how will you deal as city council member with issues with the university, who is hosting us, by the way?
Yes, and we very much appreciate it. Thank you. Well, actually, I have experience working in town gown issues in the past when I was on the transit authority at Kent State. It was very much this issue of we were trying to get the university to do certain things to provide paratransit for folks, so which they didn't want to do. And so talking about dealing with universities is something that I have experience with, and clearly this is an institution that's been here for a very long time, and needs to be worked with because it's not going anywhere. And but clearly, you've got issues that need to be addressed, and a council member should be able to go to the VP Farley and say, well, how can we get this thing done? Because I've got residents that hear your sound all day long, and that's not right. And there's got to be a way to fix that, and it's just got to have some advocacy to be able to get that done.
Ms. Ulloa?
There's no reason why you should have had to take that on by yourself at all. I really encourage you, whoever wins let's get in touch and call. And the council member should be the first and foremost to contact the university president's office. And worst case scenario, I take a tape recorder and I tape that sound, and then I go to the office of the president and I play it for him at top volume, just to make a point. But there's no reason why you, as a resident, should have to go up against a giant university by yourself as a resident with issues that clearly are impacting in a negative way all of the people in your street.
Mr. Smith?
I think as a councilman, that being your advocate that's part of the job. Solving your problems is what a councilman would do. But I would go a step further. Rather than just working with the president, I would go to the facilities manager and go to him and go to the exact location and see if he could fix it that day, or bring a team out there to work on the problem.
Thank you. All right, now, we do want to wrap things up, but okay, we'll wrap things up with one more question here.
My name is Una, and my question is short. I would like to know what you intend to do for the police. I've heard so much demand on the police. They're not walking the streets, they're not doing this, they're speeding. Are we prepared to provide housing, affordable housing for the police, so they can, if they're protecting us, they can live in our neighborhood? Because it's morally wrong to ask people to protect us when they cannot live in the neighborhood. That's my question.
Okay, Mr. Smith, I'll start with you.
That's it. A very good question. I think there should be a program that the city has that provides affordable housing, not just for the police, but for people that work for the city, if they do want to live in within Takoma Park. How do we organize that? I don't know at this point. But I think that is very important. That is something that the council should consider.
Great. Thank you. Mr. Hensel?
Yeah, I would agree. I mean, I think we do need to be able to have housing that's available for the employees in public service, because there's an additional benefit in addition to what's right. I mean, obviously, if you have police officers living in a community, living in a neighborhood, clearly that helps keep a neighborhood more safe. I mean, there's the police officer next door. So it is a program that it benefits the employees, which is good, but it's also a program that would benefit the city as well. So it's something that should be looked into.
Thank you. Ms. Viola?
Absolutely. The council should be made aware and a program started to have people who can't afford to live in Tacoma help them afford to live here. That would be wonderful. I didn't even know it was a problem. For the people who work for Tacoma, just assume that they would be able to, live here. I think that it would be something that should immediately go through. How fast it would happen, I don't know. Depends on the council.
Okay, great, thank you. Now, reflecting, I mean, that is a great question to end with, because one of the drawbacks to a forum like this is that, of course, how do you go about what are the nuts and bolts of creating affordable housing for police officers in the community, and that alone would take a whole discussion. But we don't have all night, so. But we do have several council members here in gracing us, here to see who their new colleague will be, and I'm sure each of them can tell you how much work goes into, putting together a policy like that. So having an idea is one thing, getting it done is another. For a closing question, I thought about asking you what kind of tree you would be, but
that goes with Bill Downing reference earlier.
But then I thought, I'd ask you what your greatest weakness is. But actually, But actually, what I really want to ask you, and I suspected that what we would hear tonight is that you have a lot in common in terms of values and ideas for the city. So let's suppose that you are elected and you're looking back over your 10 years, 8 years, 6 years, 2 years as a council member, and what if there were one thing that you could pick as your legacy looking back, what would that thing be? So I'll give you a second to think about that. And I guess just out of the hat, Ms. Ulloa, how are you with that?
To help as many people as possible. Everybody has individual needs, wants and desires, and want to contribute in different ways. And I think if a council member is open and malleable and communicative and keeps lines of communication open, that the possibility to help as many people as possible do what they want to do in a constructive form and manner and help the rest of the neighborhood, that is a job well done.
Mr. Smith, what will your legacy be?
Well, if I'm lucky enough to serve 8 years, 10 years, I would like to look back and reflect and say that I really did create community engagement. I really did bring people together in Takoma Park. I increased the number of people that voted. I increased the number of people that participated in the ward nights, not just 1, 2, but 10, 20, 30, 40 people. That when people talk about Takoma Park and the different wards, that Ward 5 would be like one of those top wards, the top 3 wards, regarding engagement, regarding creativity, regarding great ideas. So that's what I would, if I was looking back on my legacy, that would be very important to me.
Great, thank you. Mr. Hensel?
Well, the big dream for me would be having a public power utility, but failing that, I want to look back on a time on council and to know that I left the city better than I found it, that there was improvements, that the lives of people were touched with the services and programs and policies that made the place better than it is and made it better for generations to come. I mean, I do think about the next 100 years. And I think it's important. And if I can step away from a time on council and can feel that programs and services were provided are leaving us better, that's what I would want.
Thank you. Okay, before we conclude, I'll give each candidate a chance to address you for 2 minutes with whatever closing statement you'd like to make. How do you distinguish yourself from other candidates? What are your ideas going forward as a candidate for council? And I guess we can start with you, Mr. Hensel, and come on down the line.
Well, I mean, first I just to say, I would take up my whole 2 minutes, but I really do appreciate everyone here tonight, and I appreciate all the work that's gone into putting this together. Clearly it's very important, it's an opportunity. And I think Keith had said this is, maybe more people than had voted in some elections. So it's very good to see everybody out and all the work that all the candidates have put in to reach everybody, to get people to come out tonight. I guess what I've been saying tonight is I think we need to look at what, it's not just what a council member can do, but it's what a council member can do to sort of reach and touch the lives of other folks and create structures and create institutions and create relationships with people that allow them to also work with their neighbors together to move forward on the issues that we all face. You could be a wonderful council member, but if you still only have 3 people coming out to the Ward 5 nights on council, I mean, it doesn't lend enough voice. You've got to be able to go in and sort of work with the community and create networks that work within the community schedule and the community's pacing. That it's not just something, I have one answer, then you come to this meeting and we'll set up this meeting, but no, try to create something that people can organize themselves and be able to move forward in the ward. So that's ultimately what I would like to do as a council member, it's not just me and, and what I know and my experience, but it's being able to sort of reach out to folks and engage them in their experience and their willingness to participate, and how can we all move together to make the ward better and for the city.
Thank you. Mr. Smith? When I started this journey, I didn't even know that there would be anyone that wanted me to run for city council. So I had these kitchen table meetings, and I talked to people, and people seemed engaged. People asked me a lot of questions, and I was surprised I had some answers. What I would like everyone to take away with them tonight is I have worked in this community for almost 10 years on the Commission of Landlord-Tenant Affairs. I have advocated for tenants on the commission. I have worked on the Washington Adventist Land Use Committee. I have been it's been a wonderful opportunity, and it's been a great experience. And I'd like to say that the only way I can be a great councilman is if everybody in this room and everybody that couldn't make it tonight, if they tell me what it takes to make their lives better and what I can do to help provide a better opportunity for them. Thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Ulloa?
First, thanks to everyone for coming out. It has been a really fun journey. It's still fun. We've got a couple more days. What I'd like to say is really that I didn't start this as a flippant, thoughtless move. I seriously thought about it because I know it really is time-consuming, and it takes a lot of effort and a lot of patience and a lot of coalition building and a lot of phone calls and talking to people, and it's a lot of work, and I understand that. And I think it's worth it. I think all of you are worth it. I think everyone in Tacoma Park, but I'm running for Ward 5. I think everyone's worth it. So I am thrilled. I've had a wonderful time. I've met some really interesting people, and there's a lot of work to be done. It's kind of interesting that this election is so hotly contested when in all my time as a resident here, it's been sort of a ho-hum, oh well, things will go ahead. And this year, really, it isn't. Everybody really does feel the projects coming and the change is happening, and we all want to make the right decisions. So I leave you with the thought that we know that you are informed and that you'll make the right decision, and thank you so much for your time and your commitment. Thanks.
Thank you.
best friend I ever had. But now you're quiet as a mouse, who never comes to see me or calls on the telephone. I'm up here in the north, babe, just skin and bone. Heaven is a fancy word for living in the north with you. If you come and see me, well, it might come true. Wave hello to my neighbor, I can't pronounce his name, but I love him like a brother, all the same.
I like Mystery Magic Week because we can reenact our own theme of being Harry Potter.
We have like football, and we have basketball, also soccer. They get to meet like new kids every day.
Nathaniel Newton knew Barry Rosenberg. Somehow got himself stuck up on an iceberg. Decided he was a big old bird. He spread his wings to fly. Landed somewhere in the North Atlantic. Worried a little, but he wasn't one to panic. Said, no, don't do myself no good being all frantic. I'll just roll myself back home. Is this the biggest challenge that you got for me today? Well, you ain't got nothing on yesterday, when everything blowed up, but still, well, here I am. I guess today won't be the day I'll be giving in. That stupid truck, I gotta haul it on back to the house again. It's gonna cost me $50 and Lord knows what else, my friend. Think I'm running out of space for all my broken things. I guess it's maybe time to move. Is this the biggest challenge that you got for me today? Well, you ain't got nothing on yesterday, when everything blowed up, but still, well, Here I am, I guess today won't be the day I'll be giving in. Little girlie living out on an island. She's out sunning herself, feeling pretty fine. And then the old wind kicks up, a storm comes and knocks her in, and things don't seem so awful grand. Is this the biggest challenge that you got for me today? Well, you ain't got nothing on yesterday, when everything blowed up, but still, well, here I am. I guess today won't be the day I'll be giving in. I think a couple of mangy cats are living under my house. There's a hungry dog in the yard and I'm in here dodging the mouse. A lot of people in this country living pretty good, but still they like to grouse. Help me, I can barely keep it all inside. Is this the biggest challenge that you got for me today? Well, you ain't got nothing on yesterday, when everything blowed up, but still, well, here I am. I guess today won't be the day I'll be giving in. Is this the biggest challenge that you got for me today? Well, you ain't got nothing on yesterday, when everything blowed up, and still, well, here I am. I guess today won't be the day. No, no, today won't be the day. I guess today won't be the day I'll be giving in.
Shemler Mogilmar, Shemo Hezakilmar, Nion Spain, Ein Soon Her.
Council will stand in session. Roll call, please.
I'm not here asking you to stop growth.
A member of my family was killed with a gun. It can happen, and it does, and it was an accident.
To vote against these fares and cutting services. Aye passes 5-2.
A lot can happen in a day. We'll make sure you don't miss a thing.
¿Qué tal, amigas y amigos? El segurosocial.gov. Usted puede solicitar para jubilación o Medicare y obtener una estimación de su beneficio de jubilación. Todo esto en español. Es tan fácil.
Sector Nanor, Mahar Squeal Yowing, Ompul Home Björ, Snar Neve Tartunish going Mabron. O shame Alair, Mongil Mahar, shame O Hezakil Mar, Niun Spain. Ein soon hair shane, oh, we game on Gilmar. Nehiving qua, Barsur Carnioin, Tad fear he knows, Lair boy has sport, Tatsu high suen, and morn sabron, oh, squeal wing, on bull home björ. O shemelech mon gilmar, shemo heza gilmar, Jonas Spain, ein soon hair shane, oh we gay mon gilmar.
As you leave this place, you may feel afraid, and the dreams you offer this weary world may fall by the road. And who knows where